So JBL just put out two bangers of party boxes. First off, there's the JBL Partybox 520, which I feel is the perfect size. It gives you more than enough power where you never ask for more, but you never get overwhelmed and feel like you made a mistake. But then there's the JBL Partybox 720, which basically says, oh, you think the 520 is crazy? Then check this out. Now, the 720 can be a little overwhelming, but is still as versatile as the Partybox 520. However, Sony also recently put out the ULT Tower 9, which is very similar to the Partybox 720, but it does have something the 720 is sorely missing, and that's mid-range drivers. So today, we're going to compare the JBL Partybox 720 to the Sony ULT Tower 9, and let's see which one's actually right for you. Regarding pricing, the JBL Partybox 720 has a retail price of $1,100, which is a lot, but trust me, you never wonder what if you had something bigger, and it can still sometimes be a little overwhelming. But then there's the Sony ULT Tower 9, which has a retail price of $900, and just like the 720, the Tower 9 gets more than loud enough. Now, if you want to pick either of these two speakers up, they'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. And if you want to further support the channel, then you can always watch some of the related videos in the description down below. So first, there's the design of these speakers. They're roughly the same size as one another. However, the Sony is a little lighter, weighing in at 65 pounds, whereas the 720 weighs in at 69 pounds. Nice. But more importantly, both of these speakers are still fairly portable thanks to their built-in wheels, so you can easily roll them around. And the great thing is that both of these wheels are very chunky, so you can still roll these speakers around in a parking lot, on the sidewalk, in the grass, or even on a thick carpet. However, with both of these speakers, it is preferred that you have some help when you're going to load them into the car, or if you're going to carry them up and down stairs, if you don't want to damage the speaker itself, the car, or the walls in your house. But when it comes to durability, both of these speakers have a mostly plastic body, which can get scratched very easily, and they both have a thin metal grille on the front, which can get dented very easily as well. So you do want to be careful with both of these speakers. However, the JBL Partybox 720 does have an IPX4 water resistance rating, whereas the Sony doesn't, because the Sony doesn't have a cover for its plug. So in general, I do feel that if you do plan on using either of these two speakers by the pool, I would recommend the JBL because of the water resistance rating, but also the control panel on the JBL is using physical buttons, so even if your hands are wet, you're still going to be able to control your music, whereas with the Sony, since it is using a touchpad up top, wet hands might be a bit of a problem. But then there are the light features on these speakers. Now, I think the light feature on the Sony looks good, and I really like that it has floor lights, and these floor lights have a large area effect, so it really gives the speaker a very big presence, especially at night. However, I do feel that JBL's light feature is more impressive and dynamic, and is a lot more visible by comparison. But also, with the JBL, since this speaker is using Auracast, you can connect it up to JBL's party lights and get them to play in sync, so you can extend your light feature if you want. But like I said in the full review, I do wish that the JBL Partybox 720 had floor lights like the Partybox Ultimate. Nonetheless, if you do decide to use the light feature on either of these two speakers, that is going to take its toll on the battery life. Now, when it comes to battery life, these speakers are fairly different from one another. The Sony does have slightly better stamina, because with this speaker, if you were to use it at 40% volume and with the light feature turned off, but with the ULT feature turned on, it's good for around 20 hours of playback time, which is really good, and 40% volume is already a really good listening volume. Whereas with the JBL Partybox 720, if you were to use this speaker while at 40% volume and with the light feature turned off, but with the bass boost feature turned off, then it's going to be good for around 15 hours of playback time. But battery life on both of these speakers really varies depending on how you use them, but real dual use for me with both of these speakers playing at 60% volume and with the light feature turned on and with their bass boost or ULT feature turned on, they're both going to be good for around 8 hours of playback time, and 60% volume on either of these two speakers while indoors is going to require hearing protection. But the main difference between these two speakers is that with the JBL, you can quickly and easily take out its battery. So if you want, you can get multiple batteries and keep the party going. Or if you get to a point where your battery can no longer hold a charge, instead of having to get a new speaker, all you need to do is just get a new battery, which is going to be good for the overall life of your investment. But with the 720, this speaker is actually using dual JBL 600 batteries, the same batteries that you'll find in the Partybox 520 and Boombox 4, except they're both just using one battery, whereas the 720 is using two. But if you want, you can actually mix and match batteries between these three speakers. And to charge both of these speakers, they both charge via a double barrel AC port. And with both of these speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you are going to get a performance boost out of them. They're both going to get louder and they're both going to have more bass. But then there are the ports on these speakers, and this is another area where the JBL beats the Sony. First off, the JBL is using XLR combo jacks, so if you want, you can plug it into a mixer, making it great for someone that might want to moonlight as a DJ. Whereas with the Sony, you can still use it with a mixer, but you're either going to have to use an audio jack connection or a Bluetooth connection. It works, but having that XLR input is just more solid. But more importantly, with both of these speakers, you can plug in two microphones for karaoke, or you can plug in a guitar. But I think two mics for karaoke is more important. Now, with both of these speakers, you can go ahead and add an echo if you want. However, with the JBL, you can also go ahead and adjust the bass, and you can adjust the treble of your microphone, which is something that you can't do with the Sony. Now, like I said, with both of these speakers, you can plug in two wired mics, or you can also use JBL's or Sony's own wireless mics. Now, I do think JBL's mics sound better, and they also do a better job of focusing on just your voice, and they also do a better job of not picking up as much noise pollution when you're just handling these microphones. But the weird thing with JBL's mics is that their mics have a 20-hour battery life, but the receiver has a 12-hour battery life, whereas with a Sony's mic system, both the mics and the receiver have a 20-hour battery life. But regardless, you can use these wireless mics with any speaker out there. But with the Partybox 720, this speaker has a USB-C port, which you can use it to charge your own phone, or you can also use it to charge your mics or receiver. And you can also use this USB-C port as a wired connection with your phone. Whereas with the ULT Tower 9, this speaker has a USB-A port, which I don't feel is as convenient, but you can plug in a USB stick if you want. But with both of these speakers, you can still use them with a wired connection because they both still have an audio jack. However, the Partybox 720 also has an audio out jack, so you can always daisy chain the speaker up to any other speaker, regardless of size or brand, and get them to play in sync. Now, the Sony doesn't have this audio out jack, but what it does have is an optical port, so if you want, you can connect the speaker up to your TV and use it as a soundbar, and I also feel that this is a super useful feature. So here you do have to choose if you want to have that audio out jack or that optical port, depending on when and where you plan on using your speakers. And when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, both of these speakers can be connected to two devices at the same time, so you and a friend can both be DJing. Latency is not an issue for either of these two speakers, so you can use them to watch videos with on your phone. But when it comes to audio codecs, the JBL only has support for SBC and AAC, which is fine. But the Sony has support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. But if you do want to use LDAC, you do have to be an Android user, because iPhones top out at AAC. But regardless, the Sony still sounds great, even with AAC. But wait, if you're actually going to charge all of this stuff, then check out our partners over at Anker. They've got a ton of battery banks and chargers. And personally, I've been using this new 7-in-1 charging station from Anker. Now, personally, I really like this charging base because it has two built-in USB-C cables which retract, and you can use them to either charge small devices like your earbuds, or you can even use them to charge your larger devices like your iPad or MacBook. There's an additional USB-C port, so you can can plug in an additional cable. And there's also a USB-A port if you've got any older devices that are using a USB-A cable. Plus on the back, you've got an additional three-prong AC ports so you can plug in any of your other devices, and this base also has a built-in screen so you can see how much power it's putting out. You can also see how much power each device is taking, and you can even get temp readouts just to be safe. Honestly, this charging base does save me a lot of clutter here in the studio because I have a lot of devices that just constantly need to be charged. So if you want to pick this charging base up, it'll be linked down below, or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button. And I'm also going to keep a coupon code in the pinned comment down below so that I can get you an extra discount. But with all that out of the way, let's talk about sound. Regarding speaker setup, these two speakers are very different from one another. The JBL Partybox 720 has dual front-mid-firing woofers with an exhaust port that shoots out the back and dual front-mid-firing tweeters. A pretty basic speaker setup. Whereas with the Sony ULT Tower 9, it has a single front-mid-firing woofer with a downward-firing exhaust port, dual front-mid-firing mid-range drivers, and a total of 4 tweeters. 2 that shoot out the front and 2 that shoot out the back. And like I have said multiple times already, I really wish the 720 had these mid-range drivers, because the Partybox Ultimate also has these mid-range drivers, which does help with their speaker's instrument separation, and it helps it sound more open than the 720. So I do think the 720 not having these mid-range drivers is a shame given its size and price. Now, the Tower 9 also has its ULT feature. ULT 1 is going to increase your bass, and this is a setting that I like to use while indoors, and ULT 2 is going to increase both your bass and the sound pressure of your speaker, so the mids and highs are going to be more prominent. And ULT 2 is going to be better for outdoor use. Whereas with the JBL, it has its bass boost, deep and punchy, and personally I prefer deep because I feel that it gives you more kick in your bass, whereas with punchy, it does give you more resonance, so it can mess with the rest of your music. But now we're just going to go ahead and jump into the sound test. Both of these speakers are playing at 75% volume while unplugged, and the JBL is playing with bass boost set to deep, and the Sony is playing while in ULT 2.
I feel the gravity pull and it keeps me away. I would rather be here, lonely in space. I've made up my mind, I just wanna be free. I live my own life in a new galaxy. I wanna be weightless in the silence of the night sky. I wanna free fall into nothing at all. I'm taking the moment, starting all over. I wanna be free and live my own life in a new galaxy. I can feel the memories fade, seizing my mind. I can finally breathe when I'm closing my eyes. Never realized what light years could do. Now I know I'm better off without you. I wanna be weightless in the silence of the night sky. I wanna free fall into nothing at all. I'm taking the moment, starting all over. I wanna be free and live my own life in a new galaxy.
So when it comes to sound quality, these two speakers do sound fairly different from one another. Now first off, there's the bass. Both of these speakers have a lot of bass, but they are very different. The bass on the JBL is a lot more violent and physical than the bass you'll find on the Tower 9. The bass on the JBL will rattle the walls in your house more than the bass you'll find on the Sony. However, the bass on the Tower 9 is much smoother and cleaner than the bass found on the 720. But more importantly, we have to talk about the instrument separation on these speakers. Plainly said, the JBL Partybox 720 sounds a little more nasally than the Tower 9 because it puts more of an emphasis on the highs and the mids aren't as defined. Whereas with the Sony, the speaker sounds more open than the 720 thanks to those additional mid-range drivers. So first off, the Tower 9 doesn't put as much of an emphasis on the highs because it doesn't have to, and instead the mids are better detailed thanks to those mid-range drivers. So as a result, the Sony ULT Tower 9 sounds more balanced and more open than the 720, whereas the 720 sounds more violent. Nonetheless, both of these speakers sound good, but the Sony ULT Tower 9 does give you better quality sound. And then there's just the max volume performance on these speakers. Now, while they're both running off of their internal batteries, both of these speakers are going to have no problem with a 50% party, and they're both good for commercial use. Think a medium-sized restaurant, a small DJ gig, or some type of event booth. But with both of these speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you are going to get a noticeable performance boost out of them. They're both going to get louder, and they're both going to have more bass. And when both of these speakers are plugged in, they get almost as loud as the JBL Partybox Ultimate. But overall, I do feel that the Partybox 720 gets a little louder than the Tower 9, especially the physicality and the bass. But the Tower 9 does give you better quality sound. But finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, with both of these speakers, if you have two of the exact same speakers, then you can wisely pair them up and get them to play in left and right stereo mode, but they have to be two of the exact same speakers. Now, the Sony ULT Tower 9 is using Sony's wireless party chain, and you can pair it up to Sony's other speakers that are also using wireless party chain, like let's say a Tower 10, a Tower 9, XV800, XV500, or to the XP700 or XP500, or you can also pair it up to any of Sony's smaller speakers that are also using wireless party chain, like either the Sony ULT Field 7, ULT Field 5, or ULT Field 3, or you can also pair it up to the Sony XG500, XG300, XE300, XE200, or to the XP43, XP33, or XP23. The only thing is, you cannot connect your Sony ULT Tower 9 up to the Sony ULT Field 1 because it does not have a wireless party chain, and I do feel that that is a shame. Whereas with the JBL Partybox 720, it's using Auracast, so you can pair it up to other Auracast speakers, like let's say a JBL Partybox Encore 2, or the Partybox 120, 320, 520, 720, or 2 and Ultimate, and get them to all play in sync. Or you can also pair it up to any of JBL's smaller speakers that are also using Auracast, like a Charge 6 or an Extreme 4, a Flip 7, a Clip 5, or to a Go 4, or you can also pair it up to the new JBL Grip or the JBL Boombox 4. And you can also connect your 720 up to any of JBL's older party boxes that are using TWS, like let's say the original Encore or Partybox 110, 310, or 710. The only thing is you can only have a total of 2 speakers wirelessly paired to one another. But also keep in mind that you cannot connect your JBL Partybox 720 up to any of JBL's older speakers that are using Party Boost, like either a JBL Boombox 3, a Boombox 2, an Extreme 3, a Charge 5, a Pulse 5, a Pulse 4, a Flip 6, or to a Flip 5. But also with Auracast, you'll be able to connect your JBL Partybox 720 up to any non-JBL speakers that are also using Auracast. And like I mentioned earlier, the Partybox 720 also has that audio out jack, so if you want, you can always daisy chain it up to any other speaker, regardless of size or brand, and get them to play in sync. But with all that being said, I think both of these speakers are great, but they are very different from one another. I think the JBL Partybox 720 is a lot more versatile than the Sony ULT Tower 9. It has an easy to remove battery. It also has those XLR inputs, so you can easily plug it into a mixer. It has that audio out jack, and it's using Auracast. So you can pair it up to JBL speakers and non-JBL speakers, and you can also pair it up to JBL's Party Lights. However, the Sony ULT Tower 9, this speaker does sound better than the JBL Partybox 720 because it sounds more balanced, more open, and there's much better definition in the mids thanks to those mid-range drivers that I really wish the 720 had. Honestly, I think that choosing between these two speakers is going to come down to preference and if you've already invested in either Sony's ecosystem or JBL's ecosystem. Personally, I do prefer the Sony ULT Tower 9 because first off, it is a little more affordable, but it also sounds better thanks to those additional mid-range drivers and quad tweeters. But with the 720, maybe you might want those extra large combo jacks, maybe you want that audio out jack, or maybe you just want that better looking light feature. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.